welcome to the brand new podcast from Loughborough University, Let's Talk Loughborough. We are bringing you interesting interviews from staff and students across the university, so stay tuned to find out more. I'm your host, Jemima. I'm a second year student at Loughborough studying English with Digital Humanities.
And I'm Soph, I'm Jemima's co-host. I am the Internal Communications Officer looking at staff and students' comms.
Today we're celebrating International Women's Day and discussing this theme of breaking the bias. We're joined by Maia, the Women's Network for Staff and the Student Women's Network. So would everyone like to introduce themselves? We'll go with Izzy first. If you'd like to tell us your job, your degree.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm the Student Loughborough Women's Network International Women's Week Officer. I study politics and international relations. I'm a second year student. Really glad to be here.
Thank you. And we'll go with Gemma next, please.
Hi, my name's Gemma Whitcomb. I'm a senior lecturer in psychology in the School of Sport, Exercise and Health Sciences, and I'm one of the founding members of the Maia committee.
Thank you. And then Jenna.
I'm Jenna Townend. I'm a strategic change programme manager in people and organisational development, and I'm also the professional services co-chair for Maia, working with Gemma and a lot of other colleagues.
Thank you. So we're going to go into a breakout question first, an icebreaker question to get to know each other. So name a woman who inspires you?
I was thinking of Phoebe Woolabridge. I don't know if you guys have heard of her, but she's a screenwriter, an actress and director, and she's like incredible. I really love her work. I feel like she slyly puts in a bit of feminist, like casual feminism into her work, which is really nice to see.
I'm going to say Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's a Supreme Court judge in the US. I just think she's such a trailblazer, but there's a brilliant quotation of hers where she talks about the importance of fighting for the things that you believe in, but doing it in a way that brings people with you. And I think that's really, really important. So yeah, she'd be my go-to.
I'm going to go really old school with Emmeline Pankhurst, and the Pankhurst sisters. So I'm kind of mildly obsessed with suffragettes. But, I think what they did was amazing, and how they did it at a time when women, didn't even, weren't even really allowed to work, let alone do anything else. I think it's kind of really inspiring. But so old end of the spectrum for me.
Mine has a bit of a story behind it. Mine's Michelle Obama. When I was younger, my head teacher in primary school when I was in year 6 gave me a copy of TES, which is like a teacher's magazine, and Michelle Obama was on the cover, and he goes, "Gem, if you go really, really far, you could be like Michelle Obama if you try hard." And I was like, yes, I really wanted to be it. Unfortunately, I cannot be a first lady. I mean, I probably could, but who knows? But she really does inspire me in like all the work she does, and it was like great representation from when I was growing up, and she does inspire me like from the day to day. So what about you?
So anyone who knows me, this will come as no surprise, but I would probably say Taylor Swift, not just because I'm a massive fan of her music, but I love all the work that she is doing with smaller artists to ensure that they actually see more of the money that they should be getting, and that people own their own music and it can't be bought by men in power who have nothing to do with the music. So I would say her.
Fab, brilliant. We've got a range of people there. So we're going to dive straight into the questions, and we'll start with, how did your networks get set up? So if we go to Gemma and Jenna.
So Maia. So I think Loughborough used to have a women's network of some sort in the past, and then it sort of mothballed maybe from somebody leaving the university. So back in 2020, we held our celebrations for International Women's Day at the beginning of March, which was literally the week before lockdown happened at the start of the pandemic. And we've been thinking about relaunching the Women's Network for a little while, and basically in May 2020 decided that now was as good a time as ever. And I think everyone was really kind of craving that connection and that community that we were missing from being on campus. So we took the plunge, and it kind of took off in a way that I don't think we'd quite anticipated. The membership grew hugely, very, very quickly. We now have over 500 members, which is fantastic. But yeah, that's the sort of story of where we came from. So we've technically been an online network the entire time so far, but we're looking to correct that fairly soon. But I think, Gemma, do you want to say a little bit about kind of who Maia represents as well, who we bring together?
Yeah, so from the point of view of the committee is made up of academics, people from professional services. We've got a graduate management trainee, postgraduate teaching assistant, and people that represent both the Loughborough campus and the Loughborough in London campus. And networks open to everybody, so to all women, to trans women, to people who feel comfortable in a female-centred environment. And one of the main things that we've done in terms of committee positions is to make sure that we always have a kind of academic representation and a professional services representation, because all too often what we found is things that happen in the university tend to be focused around the academics, so an academic career path, academic promotion, and professional services don't really get a look in as well. So we wanted to make sure that we were representing the women in those jobs as well. So it's a real mix of people.
So the Women's Network is part of the Students' Union. So we have, we're technically an association under Welfare and Diversity in the Students' Union. It's actually been really difficult to try and trace back the Women's Network. I think the earliest I could find it was 2011, but there's no like formal creation, I don't think. As soon as they created the Welfare and Diversity Committee, I think we got a women's officer, and from there they expanded it to a whole committee, which was great. And now we're actually at our biggest. We've got 11 committee members, including our Ethnics Minority Officer, we've got an LGBT officer, disability officer, myself, the International Women's Week officer. So we really do cover a lot of things across the Students' Union and the student body. So we're thriving, I think.
Fab, it's so interesting to hear like how these things have come about, especially with Maia being during lockdown, which is a whirlwind of a time. Seems like a long time ago, wasn't that actually? But also how we've had that women's network since the Welfare and Diversity set up. So now I'm going to merge two questions in one here. But what are the aims of your network, and what are you most proud of your network achieving so far?
In terms of Maia's kind of activity, really our aims kind of centre around three different things. So we want to provide an inclusive community for all women at Loughborough and help facilitate connections across campus. So connecting women who might not have come across each other before. And I think the online nature of Maia has really helped with that in the early days for sure. The second thing is around creating and delivering events and initiatives. And I'll say a bit about that in a second in terms of what I'm most proud of. And then our final sort of aim is around delivering and advocating for change to progress gender equity at Loughborough. So whether that's Maia leading on a particular piece of work, or it's us collaborating with different areas of the university to kind of make things happen. So in terms of what I'm most proud of within Maia so far, we launched a mentoring scheme about 6 months into the network that was open to all members, all levels of seniority, and we put together about, I think it was nearly 60 mentor and mentee pairs through that. So they've now just sort of got to the kind of 12-month stage of being in those mentor-mentee relationships, and the feedback has just been brilliant from people. We've had messages saying that people have gone and got other jobs as a result of the relationship, which is brilliant. That was one of the things we wanted to enable, was people's kind of development and progression, and also people saying that they just feel more confident, more self-assured in their roles as a result of it. So I think really proud of that impact that we've seen, and I know Gemma, you've also benefited and been like part of that scheme as well, and the other things that I know you're proud of, having been involved from the beginning as well.
Yeah, I would say one of the things around pushing forward gender equity and really kind of having a way that we can listen to voices and then represent those voices, rather than it just being, maybe tick box exercises that we have. The university has a certain initiative, but I think in this way we're really hearing people. And from that perspective, one of the things I'm most proud of being able to initiate through the Maia network was a survey that we did looking at harassment of women. And actually this was filled in predominantly by students as well, which was really nice to see. And from that, what we kind of discovered is, you know, the things that we thought we might discover. But the big massive take-home message for me was that some of these issues were being reported, have been reported, but nothing was really happening, or people didn't feel like anything was happening. So by doing this kind of larger survey and being able to create something and put it in front of the right people, we're quite hopeful that, you know, things may change. And some of those things are quick wins, really. They're about facilities on campus, they're about lights in certain places, making women feel unsafe. Other stuff is more to do with kind of safety on nights out, and that's something that we really want to try and change. So I'm really glad that we did that piece of work and we've got that kind of tangible evidence to move forward with.
Definitely. And I would also add to that, as not only am I a member, but also I am on the Maia committee as well. And it's been amazing seeing the stuff that Maia has done over the past year. And I've also benefited from that mentor scheme and come out so much more confident, really helped me to feel more confident to go for a promotion. And I think it's just been incredible and such an honour to be part of it. And also just great to work somewhere where it exists. I've never worked somewhere where that's been a thing, and it's great. It's so amazing to connect with other women, and I'm sure, Izzy, it's similar on the student side.
Yeah, so I think the student network is very similar to Maia. We definitely strive to provide a safe and inclusive environment and community for women, in particularly the students at the university. I think as well we want to create a community spirit so people can meet other women and feel like we've fostered an environment where there is a level of safety. I think for me, the proudest thing I am about the committee is that at the start of the year there was a spiking crisis, and our committee was really helpful in facilitating change in the students' union to get increased security, better checks with people getting spiking into the union, making sure that stays out. I think it was quite overwhelming. There's a lot of interest in the committee right at the start of the year, which was quite a lot of workload, and people within our committee really managed to balance that out, and we really managed to create a lot of change, which I'm really proud of seeing. I don't think you've experienced that on a regular day, which is really nice to witness.
No, it's definitely nice to see the change, especially in like the union and like stop caps and that stuff, just to make sure that extra prevention. And it's really nice that it was implemented as well. And like the things you're doing on both sides for Maia as well. It's just amazing to hear. So we're going to move on to our theme now about breaking the bias. And what do you guys think when it comes to that term, breaking the bias?
I think for me, it's thinking about all of the different ways that bias can manifest, and the importance of having visibility and kind of representation of people who are challenging things, who are doing things in a slightly different way. But I think when we first started planning Maia's events for International Women's Day, we were thinking that actually that bias isn't necessarily just about gender roles, that it's about things like the belief that there's a right time to think about having a family, that there's a right way of your career progressing, of doing things in a certain way. So I think it's not just about challenging say bias or stereotypes about the type of job you could do, but also how you're doing that and what your progress and what your career looks like and your life around that. So that's where my head goes to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's challenging the normalisation of particular ways to do things. So I did my PhD and then moved abroad, basically just took a career break for a few years, which was to support my, at the time, husband's career. And that's no doubt damaged my career, really. And then had kids, and then was a single mum for years. And there's all these kind of stigmas associated with all those things. But actually, you know, nobody's life is perfect, and this kind of perfect linear progression that, especially in academia, you seem to supposed to go through. And if you don't, then you haven't done it right. I think we just need to get rid of that completely. I also think it's kind of like we have these this feeling of bias against women or bias against certain things, but I think we also have to break the bias that we have towards things that are a bit male centric, like this belief that, you know, aggressive leadership is the best way to lead, and that's how you're going to let people do things, and that being collegial is okay if it gets you to a certain position. I think we still have a bit of that culture, and that needs breaking as well.
I would completely agree with everything you've just said, actually. I think I reflected on it as being deconstructing stereotypes and prejudice. I think it's really important to break that down, and breaking bias can be something you recognise internally as well. Like, unconscious bias doesn't have to be explicit, it can be implicit in that sense. I think taking self-reflection and doing that is hugely important in moving forward and getting that equality and that I don't know how to put that across, but that equality to men and women. I think also it's important to look at masculinity and femininity. There's no confinements to that. Breaking the bias of the stereotypes of masculinity. I think you kind of touched on that in the workplace, but also across society. I think that's hugely important to look at.
I was just going to build on what you were saying then, Izzy, because the backup, if somebody else had said Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the beginning, my backup was Jacinda Ardern, for exactly the reason that Gemma was talking about, the different type of leadership that she has shown, that what you can do when you put compassion and empathy front and center of kind of how you approach things, as well as making decisive decisions. But
I was going to say with her as well, also the fact that she's got children and is not yet married has, drawn attention time and time again. Yet other people, like our own Prime Minister, that's had children and and not been with that, but that's okay. She gets a lot of scrutiny for her, and it's just it's the same thing. It's just the expectation that women should have to do it one way.
Yeah, everything you touched upon is very, very it's a lot to think about, but also something that we need to do and push forward for, especially because there are a lot of stereotypes and there's a lot of bias to be broken in order for everyone really to be on equal equality, and for us to, like you said, about breaking stereotypes in the workplace, and also internal reflection is really important as well. But moving on to the next question. So what does each network's events focus on, both inside and outside of International Women's Day?
So I think for Maia, it's two different things really. I think like I said at the beginning, with how we started as a network that was primarily just providing a space for people to come together during that first lockdown. And sort of we know from the research and things that have been published about that first lockdown that there was a disproportionate impact on women who were picking up a lot of additional caring responsibilities, whether it was homeschooling, looking after relatives, whatever it might be. So part of how we started was about providing a space for people to come together and connect. And we've always wanted to maintain that, because I think it's important that as networks, we're not always just thinking about work and progression and development, that we're also just taking time to connect and kind of talk with people. So that's something that's really important to us. But then obviously we do have other events that are sort of focused around, say, panel discussions, where we're bringing together women to hear about their career journeys or lessons that they've learned that they would kind of pass on to others. So we're trying to get that balance between the sort of social, providing connections, and then events that do help people kind of develop and progress as well. And I think, again, going back to the point about breaking the bias, one of the things that we're doing for International Women's Day this year is providing one of those protected kind of spaces for women to come together who've been affected by miscarriage and baby loss, and challenging the fact that that's really not something that we talk about in the workplace, but it's something that affects a lot of women. So sort of putting Maia on the front foot of helping provide those spaces for people as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that, as Jenna said, from a employment perspective, there's lots of things we want to do to support and help develop women, but also, we know that social support is the biggest protective factor for mental well-being, and everyone's been through a tough time. And I think we've heard some lovely stories of people that have connected, and just even if it's just for a coffee on Teams, people need that. And also, women that are able to find other women that have gone through similar experiences than them, whether it is baby loss or whether it's, you know, divorces or other kind of issues. It's nice to have somewhere to connect and find people that you, I think a lot of people, Jenna, I don't really agree, automatically feel kind of connected with something in common and supported just because it's another member of the same network. They may not have even met ever before. So that's really positive, I think, to just be able to give that feeling of support to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective as well, we kind of do a similar thing to Maia, where we provide that community feel, and I think our events typically focus around a social aspect where we want to make sure people can come together and meet new women and meet women with similar views to them or different views to them, but a sort of community where people can come together. I know we do a few meet and greets throughout the year. I think there's normally one every semester where people can catch up and talk about things. We also do quite like some serious topics. So I know we did a domestic violence workshop a few weeks back, which is really important, I think, especially amongst the student population where that's not really spoken about much. I don't think you really hear about DV in universities to that extent. So it was really nice to see that happen. I think as well, with the Break the Bias theme for International Women's Week, I know we're hoping of hosting an intersectionality panel because I think that's also important. It can sometimes be overlooked, especially where our network might not always be as diverse as we want it to be. Having a panel where we can bring other societies in or other perspectives and views to be spoken about, listened to, I think that's really important to touch on. So yeah, I think as well, we have quite a similarity to Maia where we're hoping to touch on a career side as well. We're doing some work with Enterprise to see if careers, like women in careers, could be furthered, or like small businesses. I know we're hosting a workshop soon where small female-led small businesses can be put at the forefront and we can uplift them and empower them through a small little bazaar, which would be quite nice to do, I think. So yeah.
No, it all sounds incredible, and it's wonderful to see that there are so many things going on. And for listeners, make sure that you keep an eye on the internal university web pages and your newsletters, because there will be more information about all of the events that are going on for International Women's Day and beyond.
The National Student Survey is open until the 30th of April, offering final year undergraduates the chance to give feedback on their time at Loughborough. The survey gives eligible students the opportunity to share their opinions about being a student at Loughborough University from first year until now. Not only will you be helping to improve the student experience for current students, but you'll also be helping future students make the right choices about where and what to study. It takes around 5 minutes to complete and consists of questions that ask about different aspects of your university experience, including facilities, learning resources, and courses. To complete the survey or find out more information, visit elborough.ac.uk/NSS.
Fab. So the next question is, how do you think men can be better allies to women?
There's a number of things we could say, isn't there? I think, I suppose each of us in one way or another has touched on the sort of prevailing kind of patriarchal culture, but then within that misogyny and how that manifests. And I think we've seen it since the dawn of time, but with several kind of really high profile cases, the Sarah Everard case, other cases that have been in the news recently about violence against women, that men are talking to the men in their family, to their friends about this as an issue, and are calling people out for behaviour that might not have extended to violence, but it is the inappropriate joke that's made when they're out with their friends, that there's something really problematic that they've said or done, and not being afraid to call out those things and challenge them, and helping us doing that, because I think, speak for everyone, like we're kind of tired of being the ones to keep doing it. Like we need that kind of backup and support. So I think if taking a kind of leading role in helping to challenge those things within their circles as well.
Yeah, I think also challenging everyday stuff at lower levels as well. Yeah. So one of my friends and I we have this joke when she talks about her husband and the kids, that we always say, isn't he good? Isn't he good? Because he's babysitting, they're his kids, you know, or he's put the plates next to the dishwasher and it's really helped. So what a great guy. Nobody says that about women, you just have to get on with it and do it. And I think those are the tiny things that actually also feed into imbalance than when you're trying to have a career in work. So that kind of mentality that, you know, everything should be 50-50, you're not a babysitter for your children, you're their dads, you know, and that kind of stuff. I think kind of trying to promote that as conversations. I think there's still a weird thing that with some men, that if you're too hands-on, that it's not masculine, that's like your wife's job or your partner's job or whatever. And that kind of stuff I think needs challenging, and that's the kind of stuff that men can also do that helps be allies to women's progression generally.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. Like the idea that it is a 50-50 split, I think as much as it's a quote women's problem, it's also a men's problem, it's a people problem. I think as much as we are a women's network, we're also a people's network. I think everything we touch on is important for everyone to know about, which is why if I was to ask anything of men to do, it would be to engage in our content, it would be to attend our panels, it would be to listen to what we're saying. I think that's the way you can be the best ally. I think as well, what I noticed was during the spiking crisis and the Sarah Everard whole situation, I think I noticed a lot of my male friends being hugely engaged in that. They were really keen to get involved, and I think that's a sentiment and it's a good feeling to see and have that people are actually getting involved and men are feeling like they want to start taking action alongside us, which I think is great to see.
I just to say, I think it can be really difficult though, because if you as a man really engage with some of this and accept it, then it feels quite threatening to how you got where you are and the status quo of your position. So to actually be a really good ally means to really address and acknowledge the privilege that you have just by, you know, being born a boy. And I think that's actually quite difficult for a lot of people. And it's quite a big ask, really, because you're challenging, you know, something internal there. But that's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. We spoke about this on a previous episode of our podcast about how being an ally, it's not just something that you are, it's something that you have to do. And kind of it's a great first step for men to be like, oh my goodness, I need to recognise this and support people. The supporting the people is the next bit. That's the bit you've really got to then do once you kind of open your eyes to your privilege and understand it. The next step is, okay, what can I do about this now? And I think that's something that I will constantly hammer home to the men in my life. I'm like, I really appreciate you understanding that this is difficult. What are you going to do about it now?
And I think it's understanding that that's, like Gemma said, that's a journey that people go on. I know when we spoke about this in terms of how we can shift to a kind of anti-racist culture and what that involves in being an ally, that I think it's a similar sort of process in terms of recognizing that you probably will get it wrong. You won't necessarily always find the right thing to say. You won't call something out the first time you see it, but it's about engaging and about learning and about trying those things. I don't think anybody is expecting perfection from people. It's just asking that people, as Izzy said, that they engage and they try. Yeah,
I was going to add to that. I think self-reflection is massively difficult, even from women self-reflecting on their internal prejudices against other women. I think that's the patriarchy has ingrained that in us, regardless of if you're a man or a woman. I think self-reflection is always going to be tough, but like you said, taking that step is going to be a challenge, but once you've done it, I think everything else comes a lot easier. Like being part of the allies and being part of the community would be hugely easier once you've taken the first jump into the deep end, so to say.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's definitely important that men, I'd say, that they consume the media and listen to our conversations and engage with us, because then they'll know. Because I know I know boys and men who have never ever, this has never crossed their mind until someone has that conversation with them and they'll be like, oh, and from there they can continue on this journey as we've discussed. So the next question is a bit of reflection, since we've been talking about self-reflection. What would you tell your younger selves?
One thing I would tell my younger self is nobody's looking at you. because the feeling that I used to have that people would be watching me and I had to be doing everything right, even walking in a room, I would always think everyone's going to look at me and where am I going to go? It holds you back massively. So I guess that's a confidence thing, really. But yeah, I always felt in the spotlight. And now I'm older, I think no one cares. No one cares what I'm doing, where I'm going, and no one's looking at me. And I try and tell that to my daughter now. And my other thing would be listen to your guts, because I think actually our gut feelings are often quite right in lots of situations. And I think especially as women, we're kind of socialised to ignore that sometimes. So if something feels wrong, we're often, socialised to go along with it because we think it'd be impolite if we say no, or that kind of thing. And gut feeling is massive, and I wish I'd trusted my guts a lot more.
I think mine, just building on what Gemma said, because the gut instinct thing is definitely something I'd give that advice to my younger self as well. And I think my other point is about going back to something I said before, but that there isn't a timeline by which you need to have completed certain things. So when I went to university, I didn't start my undergraduate degree at Loughborough. I transferred here after having a year out from the place that I had started. And it was the first time in my life where then everyone that I'd left school with was on a different timeline to me. They were going to be graduating ahead of when I was, and I was kind of doing my own thing. And I think whilst that was really difficult at the time, I think that was a really early and nice introduction to the fact that you can just do things in your own way, at your own pace. And also I think having turned 30 in 2020, that there's also a lot of pressure that goes with that, the sort of targeted ads on Spotify and YouTube that are assuming that you'll go out to hit 30, so you must be trying to have a family at some point soon, and just realizing that that's all external pressure. It's nothing. You need to not internalize that, and do things in your own way and at your own pace. So yeah, that would be mine.
Yeah, I massively relate to Gemma and the feeling of being watched. I think even though I'm 19, I think a lot of my teenage years was, I did feel a lot of like, I felt I was being watched constantly. I think that comes a lot down to body image and like the media pushing that onto young girls from a very, very young age. So I'd say be confident in yourself. I think there's a lot of value in that, especially as I've gotten older. I think I've become a lot more confident in myself and my self-value and self-worth. I think that's always a nice thing to spread out across the world. So yeah.
Wait till you're in your 40s. It's awesome. Probably takes till then, but
So what about you?
I think I would probably tell myself to let go of the obsession I have on being perfect. I think that is something that is pushed on women a lot more than it's pushed on men, to be the perfect student, to have the perfect career, to have the perfect home, be the perfect girlfriend or wife. And I think all of those pressures I took on so early in my life, and I think I missed out on a lot of enjoyable experiences because I was like, no, I have to stay home and study because I need to be perfect. I have to be the perfect person. And I think I've started to learn to let that go now and be like, I don't have to be perfect. I can just do my best. I don't need to look like the people on Instagram. I don't need to look like the people in the films. I don't need to have everything. I can just be me. And I wish I'd learned that sooner, but that's fine. We can move on from here.
That thing you just said about bravery, Soph, I think there's a TED talk, the woman's name escapes me now that I've thought of it, but she's the founder of Girls Who Code. And there's a brilliant TED talk that she's done about bravery, not perfection. And there's this anecdote about the fact that in a class that she's teaching, and she sets them off on an exercise and then goes around to see how everybody's kind of getting on. And the girls in the class would rather show a blank page that they haven't even attempted. They might have deleted what was there, but they'd rather show a blank page than show something that might be wrong. And I think that's conditioned into us from such a young age that unlearning it can take a while. So the sooner you can unlearn it, the better.
Just following on from there and what Jenna said, and talking about timelines as well. I was watching a YouTube video yesterday. This YouTuber called Eve Cornwell, who, if anyone's watched her, she's amazing. I'd advise her. And she's just gone from law. She's just switched from like her law things to a startup in tech. And she's taken us through that journey on YouTube and how like she's faced, like she felt like she was a failure because she had changed her life and she was on a different timeline to everyone else. Like this thing that she'd loved since she was 19 and she's now like 24, I'd like to say. This thing she wanted to go into law is not the thing that's for her. And she's changed that timeline. And she did talk about that TED Talk. That's why it sparked it.
Yeah.
It's amazing TikTok. And she just talks about her journey. So also there. She's also a part of the LGBTQ plus community as well. So I would give her, that's my recommendation. But in terms of something I tell myself when I was younger, definitely that being a leader is not a bad thing. If you can't tell, I'm very, very loud and I love it. I put myself for it. But when I was younger, I got called bossy. So I went to a mixed primary school and I used to get called bossy all the time because I just liked to lead. Whereas the boys were like, good on you for doing that. But I wanted to lead and that's my thing. And I was like, why am I getting called bossy? And it was like such negative that a girl was leading. And I went to a girls' school in secondary school, girls' secondary school. I think that definitely shaped my career because, like you guys said, community, you're around women. And there I was like a thriving leader and I was happy about that. You were giving opportunities to lead and leading is not a bad thing. You should never be called bossy because you're leading. You are doing such a good thing and that bravery you're taking. And I think the other thing is do what you love. I think a lot of times I could have sidelined myself because I felt that, oh, that's not very girly of me, or that's not very like what society thinks I should be doing. But because I love it, I'm going to go and do it in all things. And yeah, it may be male dominated. So I play an incredibly male dominated sport of basketball. And while women's basketball is on the rise, there are such like, I see it now every day, such disparities between like men's and women's basketball in terms of pay, how they treat players, like, and me, while I could have said, yeah, I'll stick to dance because I was a dancer, I went in and I was like, yeah, I love playing the sport. I'm not going to stop it because I think, oh, there's so many boys here. And I think that's something that is definitely my, like, something I tell my younger self, that just because it's male dominated and just because there is, you don't feel comfortable in that area, go for it and like push yourself out your comfort zone because you love it. So moving on to what are you most proud of achieving personally, which is quite a big question, but I'm sure we can have many things to say here.
Oh, there's lots of different ways that question could go, but personally, I'm just proud of where I am, really, and who I am, because there's been some adversity. I said a bit earlier about, becoming a single mum. My kids were really young when my husband decided to leave. And, and that with trying to, I only had a part-time short-term contract here at the time. So I've been kind of like building my career after having a career break, whilst being a single mum with very young kids. And university wasn't quite as flexible 10 years ago as it is now in terms of kind of supporting mums and stuff. So it was just a really hard slog. But, everything is so good. My kids are lovely. They're very boy and girl, they're very feminist. But, they're lovely, well-balanced kids. I've got a lovely life now with a lovely guy and, a happy home. And I'm just really proud of myself that I managed to keep it all together, really, actually. And it's all been okay because, it could have not been okay. And I'm not saying it was easy, it definitely wasn't easy, but, I'm proud that we've come out the other end of it and everybody's happy. And actually, me and my ex-husband get on really well as well, so that's really nice. But I think that's a very kind of personal one. But all the things you need to balance and juggle and feel or not feel and have to be on top of, it's like absolutely draining. It's so tiring. So I'm actually proud that everyone's happy and okay, and I love my job and stuff's worked out. The other thing though, just to say that I'm proud of, is that through the network, really, I know that there's women that have been helped by either myself personally or the network in general, and that is an amazing feeling. It's something to be really proud of when you know you've actually made a difference.
Yeah, I think it's, so I was going to go for two as well, and the second one that Gemma's just shared was going to be one of mine, because I think it's knowing that you, through your actions directly or indirectly, that you're having a positive impact on people, and somebody has felt better about something as a result of being part of the network. I think the other thing that I'll just share is, so some people might know, so I run a long way for fun. So I enjoy doing ultra marathons in slightly crazy places. But I think for me, I think what I'm most proud of is not so much like any of the particular events that I've covered or that I've done, but because you can't cheat your way to doing those sorts of events. You have to put in the training, you have to put in the hours, and it's on you. Like, you're completely independent doing it, and you're reliant on yourself. And I think what I'm most proud of is completing those events, but because it shows you the strength that you actually have within you. When you think that you can't go any further, you can. Maybe you just need a snack or a rest, but you can go further. And I think that's quite a powerful lesson that I can see that I take into my work, that you can always push yourself, but also the need to take rest as well. So I think for me, like the proudest things I take from the sport that I'm in is are those things around your resilience, your perseverance, and translating that into the rest of your life as well.
I would probably say that joining university and getting into university was a really big achievement for me. I didn't struggle in school, but I was in a sixth form that was very male dominated, and I do politics, which also is very male dominated. And I think showing myself that I am able to get the grades to go to university, I'm able to be here, I'm able to do really well in my degree. I think that's something I take massive pride in. I think as well, a sort of professional one, if I can say professional, is that I'm for the International Women's Week, I'm actually organising, alongside some of my committee members, a dinner party, which we've managed to get the commitment of VC Nick, which was a huge thing for me, because I really wanted to see a student body and senior staff merge together in a conversation, and being able to facilitate that has been a huge thing to witness for me and to create. I've never been able to do an event like this scale with this many people, which has been amazing to watch happen. So yeah, that's what I'm proud of.
That's amazing achievements. I think both of mine have been stolen by Gemma and Izzy. I was going to say, when Gemma said hers, I was like, dang it, stolen. Mine is definitely being where I am now. But also, like Izzy said, university. I think I had a very rocky road to get to Loughborough, especially we were the year that didn't have A-levels, so results day was a bit unsure for us. But definitely my biggest achievement is where I am now, sitting here in front of you, doing a degree I really love, playing a sport that I love that I thought I was going to have to give up at uni, having a job I love, which I didn't think I was going to come to uni and get a job for festival, but also having a job that I can do stuff like this and podcasting and stuff that I thought I was going to have to give up at a much younger age, because society tells you you can't be a rock star, you can't be a podcaster, you've got to put something down. And then Soph and Hannah could talk to me, and I was like, yeah, I'm so for it. And so being able to have these opportunities, I think, is my biggest achievement, and putting myself out there, because coming to uni is hard sometimes. Definitely, especially for COVID and stuff, it was definitely very difficult. There were times that I was wanting to go home very badly, but you stick it through, and like Gemma said, everyone's okay, I'm okay. I've personally, I know I've made my parents proud, which sounds very but I know even though my dad says it to me all the time, but I just know that like by being out here at Loughborough and going to uni and doing all these stuff, like I am everything my parents have worked for, I am making them proud for it, which is really, really cringy. But Soph, we'll go on to you. What are you most proud of achieving personally?
I love all of these, and I just want to say as well, like it's a really nice moment to have women celebrating their wins, because I think a lot of time women are made to feel like they can't shout about themselves because then it's like classed as like bragging or boasting. And so this has just been really nice to listen to everyone. And I think I have a lot of similar themes in, you know, really proud of the hard work that I put in to get to where I am. I kind of started my career in a completely different sector. I thought I wanted to go in one way, discovered that I really didn't enjoy it and it wasn't for me. And I'm so proud of myself for making the decision to be like, I know I dedicated myself to this, but I actually really don't like it. And now I'm in a job that I love. I work with wonderful colleagues. I have amazing opportunities. And definitely the podcast is something that I'm super proud of over the past year. This was a kind of dream of ours, and to be able to make it a reality and have amazing conversations with so many inspiring people has been so incredible, and long may it continue.
But like as Soph said, this has just been like amazing to hear everyone's wins and like being in this community in which we can all talk about it. And there have been amazing things that everyone has come up with and that we'll continue to do. And I hope to hear about it soon. So we're going into recommendation time. So this is the time that you can give us your podcast, book, TV show, film, any kind of resource or media, for those wanting to consume more media by women.
I've got two. So my TV show recommendation is going to be Fleabag because I just think it's brilliant. And then my so a recommendation for a book was going to be Rebecca Solnit's collection of essays called Men Explain Things to Me. And it's a collection of essays cover all sorts of different topics, but about the things in a patriarchal culture that might not seem like they're part of that culture, but then how that sort of plays out and manifests. And she's an absolutely fantastic writer, so would recommend that and any of her work to anybody. So those are my two. I might have stolen Fleabag from Izzy, I think, maybe.
I'll give you a visual of Jenna's.
And there you go.
This is the book. It's very good. Very good. I would also recommend this one. This is a really awesome read, actually. So it's basically, talking about how women have been portrayed through the eras, and actually, they're often portrayed in a way where sexuality is their kind of magic power to bring men down, kind of thing. It's quite funny, actually, but that's why, hence, at one era we're called witches, then we're called sluts. Now we're into this feminist era, which isn't in this book necessarily positive. It's the way that it's perceived as being not positive. That's really good. I'm watching this thing at the moment called The Morning Show. It's got Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon in it. It's actually really good, and it has a big theme of sexual harassment and bringing somebody down for that. But also, Reese Witherspoon actually is pretty awesome. She produces lots of things that have only been written by women. So I really like her. And then there's a YouTuber called Jessica McCabe. This is a complete bit different, but she's very young, and she has this channel called and on Twitter called How to ADHD. So she's talking about having ADHD as a young female, and ADHD doesn't get diagnosed that much in girls compared to how much it gets diagnosed in boys, and girls learn to kind of cover it a little bit. But she's just awesome because she's clearly helping loads of young people have ADHD in the way she talks about it and the strategies she uses, and she's just really, really cool. So slightly different one. It's not kind of a feminism thing, it's just a really awesome girl.
Jenna did kind of pinch mine, I'm not gonna lie. But I also kind of have got a YouTube / podcast recommendation. There's these two girls called Sophia and Cynthia, and they do a podcast called In the Girls' Bathroom, which I thought was a quite nice title. And basically they do like really casual style chit chat conversations on their podcast, but it's quite destigmatizing of sex and relationships, and I think that's really important for girls and also other people to listen to and hear about. I think sometimes those things can be deemed a little bit taboo, but it's quite nice to hear them casually spoken about. I also read Sally Rooney's Normal People a few months ago, and I was in tears. It's very emotional, but it's amazing to read. And there's also a series on BBC iPlayer if you did want to look at that. But that is probably one of my all-time favourite series and book to read. So yeah.
I can say too, Normal People had me in tears. Watched it with my friends as well. Such a good recommendation. My recommendations are here. I'm, funny enough, very, very grateful to be reading these for my course. But it's Bernadette Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other, and then The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. So Bernadette, Girl, Woman, Other is about 12 girls, women, throughout generation and time and their stories, and it's just really impactful and powerful. And it's in Britain, set in Britain, so that's quite good. And then Vanishing Half is about two sisters, and they can pass as white, and one has decided to pass as white, and the other has decided to like be on like the black side, quote unquote, and like how they've like combated that, how they go apart and then come together again. I don't give too much away in case you want to read it, any spoilers. But I also have a podcast similar to Sophie and Chinzia's in the girls' bathroom. It's called Black Gals Living on Spotify. It is like casual chit chat hosted by Vic and Jazz. And I just love them. I just put them on when I'm in the shower, starts my day off, right? They're from London and Essex, which is where I'm from, near there. And they are having like chit chat style, but also they hit some really deep topics in what they podcast about sometimes. And sometimes it's the lighter stuff. So a mix and match. And of course, I've already given Eve Cornwell, who I think is an amazing YouTuber. And if I'm throwing them all in. And then my final one, I think, is just for like casual entertainment, Emma Chamberlain. I think we all know her. I think she's amazing, especially of like her outbreak of like YouTube, but like what she does now, and content she produces, and also like how she works with Louis Vuitton, her own coffee brand, like amazing. Want to be her one day. But Soph, what about you?
Oh, you definitely stole one of mine, which was Girl, Woman, Other. I absolutely devoured that book. I loved it. But another book recommendation for me would be The Power by Naomi Alderman. I loved that book. There's something about women being given a superpower that was just so empowering to read. It just kind of flips the script on every kind of gender norm and bias. So probably a really good one to read for this theme for International Women's Day. And someone that I've been quite into a lot of their content at the moment. They do podcasts and books, potentially other things as well, but podcasts and books are the two things that I've been consuming from them, which is Brené Brown, who talks all about how you can really only have kind of courage if you have vulnerability, and the kind of importance of being vulnerable, which I think is something that speaks a lot to me as someone who was told that they were a very sensitive person as a child, and that was told to be a bad thing. I like to think that it's my superpower, and I love reading about how Brené Brown kind of says the same thing. So that's why I love her. I think being vulnerable is incredibly important in success and courage and bravery. So I would recommend anything by her.
Wow, that's amazing recommendations. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you check them out. Tell us how you feel about them. But finally, how do we find you? So how do staff and students become members of either the Women's Network or Maia? And then where do we find your network online?
So for Maia, we have a web page as part of the internal Loughborough University website. If you just Google Maia Network Loughborough, it will come up, and there's just a link that you click to fill in a form, and that's as easy as that, and you'll be a member. And in terms of where else you can find us online, we also have a Twitter account, which is actually managed by Soph and also by Hannah, which is at Loughborough Maia, and you can follow us on there.
So Women's Network are also, we're on the Students' Union website under the Welfare and Diversity section. You click on associations and we're just hidden under there. We also have an Instagram, so we're at Loughborough Women's Network _ and that's where you get most of our events and information comes up on there. And we have a link tree on there where you can sign up to a group chat, so you can see sometimes posting meetups and meet and greets on that, so you can have a look at that.
So make sure you look out for those on Instagram, on Twitter, and online. If you want to get involved, make sure you do. But then again, thank you so much, Jenna, Gemma, and Izzy, for joining us today. It's been amazing to hear about your thoughts and your views on International Women's Day and breaking the bias, and hearing all of your advice of what you give to younger selves, but also your recommendations and podcasts. I definitely will be checking a few of those out. And I hope the listeners are too.
Absolutely. And don't forget that you can subscribe to Let's Talk Loughborough on all streaming platforms, or you can watch the podcast on the Loughborough University YouTube channel.
Thank you for listening, and feel free to share any future podcast ideas with us.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys.